Allergies out here are absolutely killing me, but we're going to have to persevere. Podcasting is not for the faint of heart, so we're going to have to grind this one out. Gonna have to grind this one out. Maybe we can start this one by creating the environment a little bit, and we can just take a few moments to settle in. Maybe with a nice, slow inhale through the nose, filling up the belly. You can hold it here for a few seconds. Then a nice, slow exhale through the nose. And we'll hold it out for a few seconds. Inhale again through the nose, fill up. Hold. Exhale. And hold. Do one more cycle. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale. And hold. That is box breathing. Box breathing is equal parts inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and is typically a parasympathetic breathing pattern. But it's so interesting how subjective breathing can be. Yeah, we know that that mouth breathing is going to lead to sympathetic states, but with different people that I've worked with, box breathing is going to impact each person differently. So for some people, it really calms them down. For some people, it actually excites them, brings them into more of a sympathetic state where maybe their vital signs, heart rate, all those things are pointing towards the box breathing being parasympathetic. Their internal state, their internal, knowing is telling them like, no, I'm activated. I'm ready to go. So it's through that experimentation of different breathing patterns that individuals are able to figure out what helps them get into different states of mind. And I'm actually listening. I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I've been listening to one titled Breathe, A Life in Flow by Hicks and Gracie. The Gracie family is known for kind of being the originators of jiu-jitsu and having so many male offsprings from that family that spread the web of jiu-jitsu across the world. But Hicks and Gracie is known to be, I guess, the GOAT of jiu-jitsu, like the greatest jiu-jitsu fighter ever. And he mentions working with, when he began tapping into breath work, he really shifted his approach to jiu-jitsu and to fighting. And he talks about how the ability to tap into different breathwork patterns allowed him to enter different states of mind and of body and become more connected. And the more that I read about different historical practices, like I'm reading a book on Tai Chi right now, or whether it's Qigong, or even the Phil Jackson book, it all relates back to the breath being the origin point. And maybe that goes off in your head and you're like, yeah, well, duh. I find that for a lot of people, it's just so widely ignored. And you see it every day when people unconsciously just mouth breathe, which is so unhealthy. And Hicks and Gracie talks about in jiu-jitsu. I've been in one jiu-jitsu class in my life, and I definitely plan to continue the practice at a later point. but he talks about the ability to stay calm in uncomfortable scenarios. And that's most easily done through practicing breath work. I just put out an apnea program, and a lot of apnea training is holding on exhales. Well, that's staying calm under duress, under mental duress, physical duress. Your body and brain wants to breathe, thinks it needs to breathe. You don't actually have to breathe. And so it's delaying that decision from what you think you need and delaying it one moment after the next. The same thing can be done in like transcendental meditation, where you want to get up moment after moment, and then you begin to settle in and really lose all feeling of the body itself when you stay there longer. I've been extending my practices. At a certain point, I was timing myself, and then I started listening to actually another audiobook. I've listened to 2 audiobooks recently. An audiobook by Alan Watts. Maybe you know Alan Watts, maybe you don't. And he talks about the idea of timing yourself while you're meditating is essentially defeating the purpose of the meditation itself. You're creating this internal judgment of how long you're trying to do this thing. And a lot of people who are much further down the road of life talk about how transcendental meditation turns into, it's every moment of every day when your eyes are open, when you're out and about, just being incredibly present to what's taking place. And transcendental meditation is one of the disciplines that allows for that to begin to take place. And so what I've been doing is just eliminating the clock in total and just sitting there until the feeling arises of like whatever it may be. Maybe I'm working through a specific intention, or it's certain visualizations that I'm practicing, or certain breathwork patterns that I'm practicing. But as I get towards the feeling of like, okay, this is the time I'm ready to come out of this state, whatever it may be, without any wonder of have I done it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40, an hour. It really doesn't matter. And I find that it's a much calming way to practice. And so I don't really ever plan to time myself again. And you build that internal clock, which is incredibly valuable. But there's so much to be learned. And that takes me to the idea of like using disciplines as an anchor point. And that's really what it all comes back to in terms of the Tai Chi, Qigong, whether it's yoga, meditation, jiu-jitsu, any type of sport, whatever the discipline may be, it's used as an anchor point. But that anchor point ultimately originates at the breath. You look at all of these Eastern medicine practices, they all come back to the breath. The breath being the origin point of like the spirit itself, because you can go, as Hickson states in the book, you can go days without food and water. You can't go 5 minutes without the breath. But it's so widely ignored, and that's just it's a phenomenon that I can't... Which we can take that right into the question that I posed last week at the end of the episode, which is, where does intuition come from? And I can only share my opinion on it, but maybe you can choose to go along this journey of belief with me and see if it resonates with maybe what you choose to believe. If you think for a second that all of what is present here originated from all people originated from a star that burst long ago, and we all have those chemicals in our body, H2O, CO2, whatever else it might be. We all have those compounds and they came from a star, right? Okay, well that directly tells us that we're all linked in some way. That could be the invisible thread, if you think about it, between all people on Earth. And then you can choose to believe that we live through reincarnation, through multiple lives. And it could be through the human form. It could be through, a tree, an animal, an insect, whatever it may be. And maybe you're thinking, how does this come back to intuition? Stay with me. Okay, if we all live multiple lives, and some of us innately have stronger intuition than others. And yes, intuition can be strengthened through a lifetime, absolutely. But there's that innate intuition that we're all born with. And some is inherently stronger than others. Okay, well, if we live multiple lives, yet we have no memory of living these multiple lives, it could be believed that when we pass away and go on to, whatever is next, which in my belief, there has to be something that's next. It's impossible because it goes back to the star theory. We have all these compounds and chemicals within our body and all this energy within our body. The energy has to go somewhere, right? The other day I was looking at smoke come out of a building, and the smoke doesn't just it goes somewhere. Those particles go somewhere. Yeah, they dissipate and evaporate, and we lose sight of the smoke itself, but those particles that made up the smoke, when they were so tightly compounded together, they just fluttered away into the universe. So maybe that's what happens. But I just don't see a world where we die and the lights go off and that's it. And I actually talked with someone who had I guess it would be a near-death experience. He was on an operating table and was pronounced dead, and then came back, and a lot of the questions I had revolved around this idea, and his belief aligns with the thought that he doesn't really have a definite belief, but that there is something after this, which makes life a lot more fun rather than just thinking the lights go out. But regardless, back to the intuition. Okay, when we say you pass away, your memory is erased in this afterlife. Yet all those memories that you created, all those experiences that you had, they're blended into what can be thought of as intuition. And that is what you take with you into your next form, or whatever might be your next life that you go on to live. So you look at people who have very strong senses of intuition. It could be believed that this is not their first time on Earth. And I'm going way out there now, but you chose to listen, and so you chose to come along on this journey. This could be not their first time on Earth. Okay, this could be their 7th, 8th. So think of if you take intuition with you from one life to the next, think of all that intuition that they've been able to acquire unconsciously through different lifespans. And then you look at someone whose intuition is very poor. They just continue to make bad decisions one after the next. And it could be believed that this is maybe, their first or second time on this planet. And the solar system is so vast that's a whole nother topic. But regardless, that's beginning in my head where intuition could stem from. It could stem from the idea that we live multiple lives and that our memories are erased, but what you take with you is intuition, because if we live multiple lives, wouldn't there be something that you take with you? There has to be some meaning to the multiple lives. And I'll refer back to this book, a book by Hicks and Gracie, Breathe, A Life and Flow, his dad talks about the belief that he is a product of reincarnation and that he was once a Japanese warrior. And that's where a lot of his intuition, he says, comes from in terms of how he knew that this was like their calling. And so I think it's a very interesting topic. I mean, with any of these things and a thought experiment in general, why I named it this is we can go as deep as we want, and then we can come back to the understanding or the thought that none of these thoughts, they hold much value. They're just little avenues to go to. But what do we come back to every single time from all these thoughts? And what do therapists, through traditional talk therapy or anyone essentially tell you to come back to when those thoughts lead you in different places is, come back to the breath. Take a deep breath. So the origin point always being the breath. And that observation of smoke going into the air is very much my favorite observation from the week, because that's what drew the connection to we have all this energy in our body and it's so tightly stored in this body, in this vessel. And that when we pass away, that energy, it doesn't just turn off. It has to go somewhere, like the smoke. It goes somewhere out into the ether, into the universe. So that's just one theory. I'd be interested to hear. I love this question, so I'd be interested to hear where you guys think intuition stems from. And we'll relate that so smoothly. I relate it only because I choose to. We'll cut at 17:30. Pop. Moving into the word of the week. A lot of times I just ask ChatGPT for 5 to 10 words, and then, we'll navigate around and find something that sticks. And the one this week is the word Odyssey, which is a noun. And it's a long, adventurous voyage or journey, especially one marked by many changes of fortune, a series of experiences that give knowledge or understanding to someone. And there were 2 notes that I had about the Odyssey itself, being the journey of a sports season is an Odyssey. That's the first thing that came to my head is dang, especially, a baseball season, that's an Odyssey. Especially one marked by many changes of fortune, a series of experiences that give knowledge or understanding to someone. Each season you come out with just so many different experiences that it creates understanding of both yourself, others, the sport, so many things, which is why sports is so essential in any form for young people to take part in, because there's so many changes of fortune that happen just in one game. Now imagine the course of a season. And it's one of the most beautiful things that humans have ever come up with is sport. Then we can relate an Odyssey to intuition, what we just talked about. It's this long journey, and we come out of it with knowledge or understanding, and then we blend that into intuition as we take it from, life to life. But Odyssey can be seen on many different levels, whether that's the Odyssey of going to the grocery store, or it could be the Odyssey of a trip where the timeline is set for you. It could be like a week-long vacation. And then on a much grander macro scale, we all live an Odyssey that spans the course of a lifetime, from birth until death. That is an Odyssey. And it's all these mini little Odysseys inside of it that make up the grander scope, which is life itself. A long, adventurous voyage. Well, long is subjective. Could be long, could be a long trip to the grocery store. But you just never know what the changes of fortune might be. Maybe you see someone you know. Maybe you meet someone you like. Maybe the grocery store's closed. I got back yesterday. Need to go to the grocery store. It's Father's Day out here on May 29th. This will come out next week, but I'm walking around like this place is a ghost town. Then I look on ChatGPT. What is going on today? Oh, it's Father's Day. Then I learned Father's Day in Germany, the dads all get together and they go on hikes and bring a bunch of beer and get drunk on the hikes and then come back. It's not like typical to spend Father's Day with your family. They just go hang out with the other dads. Pretty funny, at least to me. Beer's always involved in some way here in Germany for their holidays. Plays a large part in their culture. And it's all from glass. No, you're not drinking. I guess you see canned beers, but the glass beers, like it's common here if you're drinking a beer and walking down the street to just set it by a building so that someone can pick it up and bring it to the store and get their 8 cents for it. It's like a respectful beer drinking society. This trip to Germany right now is an odyssey within the grander odyssey of life. And when we take it from that scope, there's no failure. There is nothing that could be seen as failure. Because the experiences are going to give you or me knowledge or understanding. And from that knowledge or understanding, we take it with us as we go forward. So how could you fail at something? The only way you fail, and it's so cliche, but it is true, the only way you fail is to just give up. What does that do? What does giving up do? You just keep pushing. Yeah, it's the intuition that we have to maybe leave something behind to recognize its end. But it's also that intuition that takes us on to the next odyssey and the understanding that we take from that last odyssey into the next one. It's like a book, one chapter to the next, but it's all one inside of, the front and back cover. But the first thing that came to mind was just that of a sports season, a baseball season. I mean, we're in May right now, headed into June. So, they're settling into the groove of the season right now. Maybe in the big leagues, they're like 60 games in. So you're really settling into that groove, kind of seeing what the vibe of the team is. GMs are probably looking at, like, what do we need to add? Moves are being made. You're seeing guys getting optioned. You're seeing guys getting called up, such as my friend John Rave, who had his first big league hit the other night. Pretty cool. And Odyssey directly relates to one of my favorite poems. A lot of poetry I don't understand. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't understand a lot of it. They use weird words and a lot of way out there metaphors and much more direct. As much as I like to write, I write some. I would guess you can consider it poetry, but I don't know. There's some poetry I read where it's like, you remember in school when they'd make you read a poem, be like, what do you think it's about? Like, you lost me after the second word, But this one, I think I can grasp. And this isn't the whole poem, but it is by T.S. Eliot. And the part that I thoroughly enjoy reads, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." One more time. "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." I mean, that could be yourself after an odyssey. You get so lost in this meditative experience of an odyssey And then eventually you come back to the self and you know it for the first time because, you're a new version of yourself. Every day you wake up, you're a new version of yourself. Which is why some people, I used to find that I would hold on to the belief that someone was the same when I knew them last week to the next week. But think of all the experiences, the many odysseys they've gone on in that week, and the many odysseys you've gone on. There's no possible way that you're the same. The only thing that you hold on to, or that is, omnipresent in both of you, is the soul, the spirit, and the breath. That's really it. And then everything else is constantly fluid and constantly changing. And so, we're not going to cease from exploration. We're going to continue to take on these odysseys, these different adventures that lead us into different places. And at the end of all of our exploring, whether it's a mini odyssey or it's the end of life itself as you reach towards the end, whenever that point is, will be to arrive where we started. So it's where we started. It's with ourselves. It always starts internally. It's the breath, the soul, and the spirit. And know it for the first time. And we'll know it for the first time because of all those endeavors, all those explorations and odysseys that we've been on that have created who we are in that very moment. It's always continually changing. And it's funny, you see people after a long time, they're like, you've changed so much. And I think my first instinct is like, no, I'm still me. Yeah. And that now it makes sense because internally you're like, no, my soul is still the same. But to them, the external view is that maybe it's a physical change, or maybe it's the way you hold yourself or speak, your emotional state of being, whatever it may be. There are so many layers that we're constantly peeling back through various odysseys and explorations. And the seasons that work with life. I mean, that's another thing they talk heavily on in the book of Tai Chi is, the yin and yang, the duality, the push and the pull. And that is very much done from a feeling of the body rather than the mind. When you listen to the body, especially from, a male's perspective, it's easier to get into the yin state. I think that males are very drawn towards yang, which is the push, do more, always. And that's very much, easily done from the mind. And yet when we tap into the yin states, which could be hatha yoga or something that's very slow, it could be no activity. That's very much tapped into through the body. The mind doesn't want to slow down, but your body's telling you, hey, we need to slow down right now. But a lot of times it's just ignored. So if we don't create some type of discipline that connects mind and body, then it becomes nearly impossible to tune in and to listen. And when we're able to listen through feeling, we're listening to the body, we're able to be more present for ourselves and more present for others. We limit the overextension that can take place when we continually just push. Especially myself. I find myself getting more tapped into to yin states, and it allows me to be more present when I'm, around other people, or more present just with myself. The breath, the soul, and the spirit. That's what we take with us, and everything else shapes and shifts on the grander odyssey that is life itself. There goes the church bell for 4 o'clock. We're going to hear 4 dings. I was meditating this morning, and at 7 o'clock, I've noticed 7 a.m., there's always just a bunch of dings that go on. And it's 100. It's 100 dings. Why do we need that? But that's literally here nor there. The question that we can take with us into next week is, what discipline do you hold that that acts as your anchor, that brings you back to the origin point? What discipline are you practicing, rather? You don't hold it. What discipline are you practicing that acts as your anchor and brings you back to your origin point? And that concludes this episode of A Thought Experiment.